We're calling the meeting to order for the Economic Development Advisory Committee. It is December 14, 12 p.m. Let's do roll call. Rene Gonzalez?
Not here.
Not here. Mr. Aguindigi? No.
No, not yet.
Cesar Garay?
Present.
Mr. Dominguez? Here. Ray Rocha? The vacant position that is now Bebe Alexander, Carol Alexander, correct? So Carol Alexander will not be vacant. Fernando Valdeso?
Here.
Julian Radnowski, I'm present, and Mayra Gonzalez.
Present.
Okay, so we have quorum. Moving on to citizen comments, do we have any citizen comments?
No citizen comments were submitted, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so moving on to approval of the minutes for October 12th, 2023. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to agenda items. Action item A, discussion with possible action on review of economic development section under the Viva Laredo Comprehensive Plan. So if I remember last, this item was pertaining to possibly scheduling was it a subcommittee meeting in order to re-review it? But I know there was also discussion of making a recommendation possibly to council to update it since all this was done prior to the pandemic. And we all know things have kind of changed since then.
And yes, Mr. Chairman, as for the last committee meeting that we had, one of the suggestions by committee members was to bring back some of the, the items under economic development so that we can review and then from there put together a matrix where we can evaluate the progress on each one of those items. There was discussion, there were comments as far as updating the study. This is, open discussion to see if this is something that the committee as advisory members would like to present to council. But at this time, what we did, we presented and we put together a brief description on the items and where they stand as of now since the creation of the department, as per you all's recommendations at the last meeting.
I went.
Go ahead.
I went over some of the things. I mean, they also created this strategies on the economic development. I kind of went on the majority, except downtown. I know there's more experts in downtown. And there's a lot of things that have been accomplished after this thing came out, like your department, which is a very important department. LC, talked about LC, and they're doing we revamped all their curriculum for logistics. We're trying to be more hands-on, more workforce environment there. That people come out of there, they're ready to work, know how to fill out forms and all of that. But at the end, they're looking for another bachelor's in logistics. I don't know what the name they're going to give. They don't want to kind of. Yours is more oriented to international, but actual knowledge or theory or whatever. And this one is more hands-on. They're going to build like offices. You're going to go in a classroom, it's like an office, it's not like a classroom. And so the bachelor will give them the opportunity to learn warehousing, freight broker, custom broker, freight forwarder. So when they finish, they want to start their own business or work for any of those things that they like. And that's some of the things that they're going to have the opportunity. That's when it comes to LC. Trade is picking up. We're 85,000 trucks short for 3 million trucks in a year. So business has grown. Has the city done something with the trade? Because they created a trade advisory committee. So no, we didn't have that before. All of this came up. So there's more communication with the city when it comes to the trade or the stakeholders. the high school, besides LC, we also have good communication with United South. In their magnet school, in the business magnet school, they have the logistics, and they do an awesome job with the kids. When they come into the college, they're pretty knowledgeable on what they're doing. What else did I see? I know in the mental health department, I think Mr. Cuellar got a big grant, no, for that department. Tax abatements, I think we here did a very good job on the 380 or what's it called, 360, 380?
Chapter 3.
380. I think we need to do, like, for several businesses, not just the retail, but also for services as well. I talked about the clusters and the local clusters. That's the little thing that we're missing on the analysis, the cluster analysis. We know it's not cheap, but I think we still need to work on that. The research and development, there's a research and development that I haven't never seen heard anything like that. The trade also, we have the third biggest bridge as well, which is Columbia. They're 1,000 trucks short from Otamesa. So hopefully with the new road that they're building, which is 50 kilometers that they were missing, it's supposed to be ready in January. They think they'll pick up those 1,000 trucks and it'll be the number two bridge in the southern border. The development is also pretty big. I mean, we could see it all over the place. In the Camino Colombia 35, there's a lot of cleaning in that area. There's also Mines Road is cleaning a lot of property. The research and development, that, I don't know about Tammy, you done something on research and development?
And I think in the condensed version,
Again?
well, there's just a very brief description that we can further discuss on some of the opportunities that are out there.
That we're lacking, I'm looking at the lacking thing, is this the center of the arts and the Plaza Theater, because it talked about the arts and culinary and all that stuff. And so again, I thought Tammy was research and development, no? But I don't have too much communication with it, so I couldn't say much on that, to be honest with you. What else? They were supposed to create 48 corporations. That was part of our homework. Do you have an idea how many they created?
This is where a scorecard would do really well. And typically, other cities, when they have comprehensive plans, it includes a plan to get someone to come in and basically score, what was said versus what was done. And we've never done that. And we're about to hit year 9, believe it or not. I think this was developed in 2015. 17, okay. Year 6.
Yes, to go to.
You're supposed to do it every year. You're supposed to do a
What page were you
scorecard.
on?
Yo voy como en la 29, voy rápido. And then the city budget, I don't know if they've allocated money for economic development. How much money have they allocated? I think they've been pretty good on that. And then we did a study for TRZ and South and North Laredo for the city. I think that was part of the strategies that they were looking for. There's also an annual survey that they recommended that the city do. I don't know if they've done it, but visit the majority or the most important companies or employers. That's also the city should be conducting annual visits on that, semi-annual meetings of development. Hello. The industry clusters.
Mr. Ronay is, yes.
For the record.
For the record, is now present.
Conferences, I've seen more conferences. I don't know how many conferences have you all done in a year, but I've been invited to some of those conferences. I know that the city has been showing up in target industries when it comes to that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, send it.
Okay, what's the objective of the review? What are we trying to accomplish before we just start talking?
If we're moving forward in any of the, if this,
Plan.
if this document is actually valid and working, moving forward.
Okay,
So.
we're reviewing it to approve it and keep on the
keep
same
going
program,
and see.
okay.
And also, I think identifying some of the action items in the areas where, you know, maybe there hasn't, they haven't been, attacked or looked at, and the
So
condensed
look for-
version, the condensed version does address some of the action items that could be open for discussion with the committee members.
Should we jump to that so we can?
Well, and,
Well,
I want to have a clear objective for what we're doing.
well, the city had adopted this plan, the comp plan.
In
So it was-
2017.
It was everybody else to follow this plan, and that's what we're trying to see if the majority of the things have been done or not.
And I think this can also be-
Things have been accomplished according to the plan, or things that can be
Right,
added
but
or
it
removed.
haven't-
And I think
yeah,
this
but
can
it haven't.
be, this can give the committee members to you all as advisory members, you know, maybe some objectives as well as we start the new year. You know, there are areas where this committee can focus or can give us, you
Okay.
know, your advice on some of those areas. I think this is a good step to have our own work plan for the new year as committee members and as advisory committee members.
The areas of opportunity.
My only concern is us going through this and saying, oh, it feels like we've done this, this, and this is completely different than actually taking a true measurement to every single one of these things. Because if you go through this, it actually has, like, there's this whole competitive analysis that says lacking strong. You know, if we redid this today and someone measured it, would these be similar? So we can understand, do we need to change our focus? You know, something that we were lacking, like workforce is now strong, do we need to go into public policy support and research and development? Because those are still lacking.
There's some areas that no longer apply. Just to give you an example, I think the study mentions the HEB downtown building. You know,
Yeah,
back
I saw
then,
that.
one of the recommendations was that, you know, that was looked into, and it was acquired by the county, you know, years back already. So, yes, to your point, as far as measuring, I don't think we will have specific measurements unless there's a new, you know, study conducted as to where we are in those areas.
But that's a great example, because that's something that we technically failed in. And I was in another meeting a day ago.
Mr. Chairman, for the record.
Oh, apologies.
Ray
Yes.
Rocha
Okay.
is present.
I was in the meeting another day ago, completely unrelated to, basically the fact that the downtown's a food desert, and this woman was sitting outside, you noticed us all walk in here to have a meeting, and she just walked in because we heard, she's like, I'm assuming this is something to get something done. And I just want to like highlight how she referred to it as something else, but she was essentially referring to the fact that the downtown's a food desert and how like people are struggling down here to be able to access like good, healthy food. She just walked in here and she was like looking to talk to someone regarding that. So that's a good thing that we could highlight and say, we failed on that and we still need to target it because there's a big demand for that. She's not the only one. Most of the people living in the downtown all complain about that all the time. So that's something I think we need to, like, maybe not call it the old HEB and doing something with that, but find out what other buildings can possibly become either a large or small grocery stores or, you know, all those individuals living down here. A lot of them don't have cars. So when HEB made that strategy to close that place down, they assumed, well, most of the traffic that goes there is going to just take their car that way. That's somewhat true, but there's a lot of poverty in this area where that wasn't an option.
There was a lot of people just crossing the bridge just to buy and then go back, even the gallon of milk.
Yeah.
You have to accomplish that. I mean, as business owners, it's probably not feasible for them to open downtown.
Yep.
So there has to be like huge incentives from the government to like rent free almost, you know, something for to cater to the citizens downtown.
And this has been a topic that has been brought up, and it's also priority for council members. And one of the things that we are seeking is what are the programs available at the federal level that can help us with the, somehow, maybe not necessarily in the form of incentives, but one of the steps that the department did take was amend the NEC incentive program to allow for companies that are, as you know, we made an amendment not to allow big buildings more than 5,000 square feet. So now we make that amendment so that in the event that there is a grocery store that's wanting to invest in downtown, that they can take advantage of the incentives in the form of tax abatement and fee waivers only for food and grocery stores. So that's one step as far as incentives, but I think there's opportunities out there at the federal level and see what funds we can tap on. So it's something that we're continuously, looking at.
Mr. Chairman, there are challenges, for instance, the HEB building. It went from a taxable property to a non-taxable property, and there's a couple of buildings now that back then when they wrote this report, they may have been empty as taxable revenue, but now the government somehow has purchased some of these buildings and they're non-taxable. And so economic impact-wise, it was a decrease than an increase in some of those. So there are challenges that even though it's a good thing, traffic-based and the amount of individuals that are not gonna be in it, it's all government-based, which is still good. I mean, government employees are a form of income for the government, for Laredo.
I remember one of the council members wanted to create a Mercado de Abastos. I don't know what happened to that one.
And that's also, and when I first started here, that was one of the projects that was kind of like in the pipeline. And conversations were held to follow the same model of Central de Abastos in Mexico. And then, change in city management but now we're back on, actually last month, we retook that conversation and see if that's something that the city wants to, pursue. And the model that might work depending on the area.
I only bring that up to highlight, this is an example where, and it's okay to have, a failed on some of these metrics, but obviously in that scorecard determine, okay, we failed, and today, because today's economy is a lot different than 2017, what do we need to do to pass those, those areas that we failed? Like, what do we need to do that today? What's available to us today? And I think that's why it's so important that I don't think we fall into this path of just kind of talking about how we feel we've done on these versus actually scoring them and having someone come and say, this is where you're at here, this is what you need to do.
So how would you get the yardstick to measure it? I mean, that's a little bit hard, though.
Well, it's how they did this last time. It's basically the same process. I'm sure, I'm nowhere close to an expert on how to measure all these things, but I know they're measurable because I see San Antonio do it every year. They do it once a year.
I understand anything that is not measurable is not manageable, but how do you actually measure each section of this document? That's
Towards the end, on page I was looking
the
at.
appendix. I didn't get all the way.
Yeah, like page 59, for example, we talk about, I think it was highlighted in here how we need to bring more, hospital-based industries here, like for healthcare. Well, but here's a Webb County healthcare employment record all the way to 2015 and how many exist. I think having that updated all the way to, I'm assuming it's usually only about 2 years.
Yeah, I think part of the reason we did this was to bring awareness to the fact that it still exists. Some, as you mentioned, we've had, 5 city managers since this process was written. So it's information also for them. City council members have changed. So we just wanted to see, okay, where are we at? How can we update this? And then city council members, don't forget that this exists and this will be accomplished under the prior watch. How can we get forward under your watch? And I think that's the way to where we can be successful in that sense, is not maybe rewrite the whole process, but at least bring awareness to the fact that some of these still exist. I'll give you an example. I asked Miriam for the information on the 4B tax because one of the biggest tools is that 4A part of the B. And I know the city went and tried to do something and then went to the state level, but then they got a veto and then did nothing to change. In my world, you get a veto, you figure out how do we change it. And I don't think they went to the next state session and said, okay, we got the veto from the governor, this is what he'll accept, let's start from there, and maybe even, if not, let's come back to Laredo and do another charter, election and say, how can we separate, because the funds are there, the arena has been, there's still need for maintenance, but we're at this point in Laredo's history that you can divide that fund and still serve both purposes, the sports and the business section of the thing. Especially as you know, Arturo, infrastructure-wise, they're always looking for seed money to help partner these projects. And if the RMA doesn't have any money, the city doesn't have any money, we can't get those. And some of them we need already right now. Yes, they're gonna be announced for 10 years later, and as you know this, the governor said, we're gonna give you $1 billion, but that's pennies compared to what the rest of the Texas got. That's not understanding the amount of impact that Laredo has on the state. He doesn't reciprocate that in the sense of this is how much we're gonna invest in your area of the state to continue. We're seeing produce growing, in October and December, November, FAR traffic went down while Laredo's didn't. So we gotta look at how we can make sure that we're aware of that. And the time has come to where we need to have that 4A tax. And it's not that it exists, it already exists. We just need to find a way to separate and give value to both the 4A sports venue and the business.
But I think I might be wrong, but I think you have to get rid of the sports in order to do the other. I think that was like the.
That was the
conclusion.
challenge back then.
That was the challenge back then, when they brought it to the legislature. You have to get rid or you have to pay it off or something like that.
And you can still go local bill and figure out how to do it. It's been done before. It just takes that the business community has to figure out a way to, but we can't have that conversation, say, okay, no se hizo nada, but we still need it. We need to find tools, and if they're saying, bring us tools, well then here's a tool. Help us get there to where we can give you the money that you need to get our projects going.
And I think it's just a matter of revisiting on that, revisiting the item and see if there are any ways we can, what are the different venues that we could look at? If that's a possibility on how to, if the tax can be divided to cover both projects, if that's something that it's doable. At this point, it's just revisiting the different venues that are out there and the process that we'll need to, follow.
How much money is in this? I know it's a ridiculous amount of money, it's just not being used, no?
It is
No, it is
being
being
used,
used
But there's
at
still.
the baseball field, from my
Oh, it's the
understanding.
Buena Vista Sports Complex.
Yeah,
right here.
it's.
What it is, it's a bond, they're bonds you pay monthly. So as you're paying monthly, you're not spending all of it. Now, it would be easier to say, okay, we paid off, we have the $4 million to pay off this bond, but the way the finances work, you have to pay it. So even though you do have the money there, it's still there for another day, but the amount of income that exists right now is more than what it should, what
And it's been running like that for a
needed,
couple
yeah.
of years.
And it's a great program. The thing is that what it does is allows elected officials to say, well, we have this much money, let's create another program. Yeah, but we need to figure out a way to say, how can we use this program for the business community? How can we use it for infrastructure? McAllen's doing this in their project, and they're leasing land, and that's re-entering income into the system, and out of that money, they're bringing in and say, okay, we can do a tax incentive because we have 500,000 that we can play with. That's money that could be used for that process, and it doesn't have to be today's money. We can say, starting 2025, let's divide this, or starting 2026, but the time has to be now to say, how can we get to that point? And that's a challenge that exists right now.
And I think going over this, I think that's one of the biggest topics on this where it hasn't been accomplished or trying to get or get the more out of, is just trying to get some of those dollars to to get them to this economic development and work on these different projects. I mean, there is a lot of stuff on here that's changed throughout the years, right? I mean, it is, but really going down into it and looking where the money is and how we can get some of this money, that's one of the biggest things that hasn't been accomplished. And I can't recall the last time this came and how it was shut down, but I think it's really is something that we need to look into and try to bring that up again, so.
And I think right now the city is in a position where they are, we're really evaluating all the different mechanisms and the tools that are available out there. You know, someone mentioned the TRC, you know, one study has been performed, another study is in the talks.
It's in
And
the
how to
works.
leverage all of those available tools, you know, the business improvement district, you know, it seems like it's, you know, taking, it's taking a more strong, you know, it's becoming a reality on how we can leverage on that. The tiers, you know, as well, you know, we have a downtown tiers and the coves that it's also taking off. So I think, to your point, I think right now the city is in that position to where they're really looking into all the different venues. And again, you know, I think that's a topic that we maybe should revisit, see what are the different processes that could be considered and how it could, you know, at least retake the initiative of considering bringing it back. And it mentions that, you know, that's, I know we're not following any specific order. Again, there's a condensed version of all the goals and the objectives and the policies that were recommended under the Viva Laredo plan for economic development. And it's true, this is not just, okay, this is how we feel that we, you know, the level that we have accomplished, but I think it's a good, at least recap on, since the creation of our department, where, you know, some of the initiatives or the projects or the items that have been addressed, and some of the items that need to be addressed, you know, and the items that need to, that we need to come up with an action, you know. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm not too sure how you wanna follow this, if you wanna go down the list, if you wanna just keep it open for, discussion on the Viva Laredo plan.
It's, so, okay, I'm just trying to understand, this is not a scorecard.
It's
Right.
not a
Okay.
scorecard, this is just an update.
It's
on
just-
some-
okay.
A very brief update on some of the items that could lead to, you know, maybe, a recommendation from advisory committee members.
If you'd like to go through it, but I don't feel comfortable giving a recommendation until we actually know where we're at again, because technically all the data we're looking at is old.
And I think if
That's
we
the
really
problem.
wanna have actual data on where we are, that's gonna take a complete, you know, update of the study, yeah. And if that's, you know, if at the end of this meeting, that's one of the recommendations that you as advisory members wanna give to council, you know, that's, you know, something that it's your, you can definitely make that, recommendation and advise council.
I think that's the best step.
I'm sorry?
I think that's the best step, is just, I mean, we can't, like you said, we can't really check off, this is done, but at the same time, we need to give, opportunity for some of these topics to rise back up into the level of where there is awareness to it. And I think that's really what our goal should be, is to try to bring back and say, okay, you know what, this wasn't done, how can we get it to start the process again? And then we can just review it by that point and say, you know, is this being looked at? I know the topic of economic development between the universities and the colleges, we're seeing that. I mean, we're seeing a strong partnership in that sense. I know that the community college has some programs out there adapting to, and we saw a presentation on that, on how to do finance, QuickBooks, accounting, and different issues that have to do with trade.
It was $1 million.
That they got some grant money,
Last
so,
year. It
so
was
we're
an
seeing
action.
some of that stuff that's continuing, we can say, yes, that's a plus. There may be some things that, you know what, were never touched because it was a topic of that day, but then COVID came and other things, and we haven't gotten there, so.
Do you guys want to go through all of these right now? Or do do you guys want to take the path of just recommending that there be an update and a scorecard?
The other committee that I said, we recommended to update the border crossing master plan, the bridge master plan.
The Port of Entry Committee?
We recommended to update the master plan, which is something similar to this one, it's a plan. And it's a 2015 numbers, I think they're pretty old.
They're pretty old.
Yeah, because those numbers have totally changed and the infrastructure that we have now is nowhere near to the infrastructure that we had back then.
They're crossing 2,000 extra trucks a month, just this year, from one year to the next.
That's great news, but as you guys see that you don't want to make decisions based off old data. Same, that's how I feel about all of this, is I feel like it needs to be updated if at least I, as an individual, were to give recommendations on what to move forward on.
At least
Well,
get a quote, at least get a quote, no?
we know the statistics part is, most of the statistics need to be updated. That's starting off the bat, most of
Yeah.
the statistics. Would you agree, Mr. Valdosta?
I do, but at the same time, I think there's stuff here that I've been reading that we can also make recommendations on. Like there's some stuff like, for example, we don't need data on how to expand existing festivals and sporting events. You know, we can make recommendations and stuff like that, or at least look into it, looking into attracting, you know, more quality of life to Laredo. And those are things that we know for sure, like, well, we only have Maná coming in every 6 months. What else can we do? You know, and there's a few of them where we can just discuss without having data, right? I mean, that's what I see.
Should we start there then? Discuss what we have data
I mean,
on
just
and
move
then,
on at least some of the items, and then if we can move on some of the items that we see data, it's not necessary, and if an item needs more specific data or more up-to-date data, then we can just request data for that item specifically. If
Would anyone like to highlight anything on here that they feel like they,
can we start with this one here?
yeah,
And
that's
then
what we're,
It's up to the committee members.
And just start with each one and just say, this is what we have right now, you know. Some of the stuff is in progress. And I guess an example would be like, for instance, in your 9.14, you say conduct annual surveys of businesses. It's in progress. Like maybe for the next meeting or something, bring the latest one from last year or the year before. What's the last business survey that you did?
that's a question I have we ever done one before?
It is my understanding that the department hasn't done it. As you all know, we have been growing our department and now with the help of Becker, who's a business development specialist, that's something that we've been working on and putting together and partnering up with the private industry associations as well to distribute and this survey. But yes, to your point, Mr. Gonzalez, we can bring a sample at the next committee meeting.
Yeah, Julie, we have worked on that very little before as part of the BRE program, to implement that. Just, you know, now Mayor's point out, we got people on board.
Yeah.
It's something we definitely drive towards. But to get the right questions, of course, on the survey.
Yeah.
Conduct individuals to say, you're developing a plan. So from section 9, what has been done or what are you looking at right now as part of your plan?
I think one of the most important items under policy 9 is the evaluation of our current incentive guidelines. To your point, I think our chapter 380, it needs to be revised and revisited. We feel that there's opportunity there. As it stands right now, it is very targeted towards, very industrial projects and incentives for industrial, which granted, it's our number one industry in Laredo, but we feel there's opportunity to add some sections in the form of also including the attraction of diversifying the type of projects that can be incentivized with this program. So going back to your question, I think that will be one of the items that I could highlight as far as the initiatives from the department is revising Chapter 380 and other forms of, and I think benchmarking is important as well. What incentive programs are being applied that have been successful in other cities, in other forms of, not necessarily just tax abatements, sales tax, and also the programs that are available at the state and federal level. So I think that should be and can be one of the priorities for the department under Section 9. That doesn't necessarily maybe require a lot of data, but it's more
How
procedural.
can we fine tune chapter 3?
I'm sorry?
How can we fine tune it to make it
Yes.
more
Yes,
efficient?
it's revamping it because again, I feel that the Laredo of today is not the same as the Laredo of back in 2017.
We
And
need a
it-
motion to,
And it's up to us to change it. I mean, the avocados, because they sell avocados.
Mhm.
But when you're going against somebody who's just selling a service, yeah, they're not gonna have the same income as somebody who sells something.
Or the same investment, yet they can still provide more jobs.
And I do want to point out that some of the programs that we have been looking at as far as guidelines and there's a couple of new programs that we're revisiting again under the new leadership of the city. The Inner City Housing Incentive Program, the 8th Street Incentive Program as well. Like I mentioned, review the update on Chapter 380 guidelines. The Public Improvement District, a policy that can be adopted as well. And also a public-private partnership policy, Those are some of the major, I guess, incentive programs that we're looking at as far as developing guidelines for the city or recommendation,
Like the
and see if they can be adopted.
Like the government, if they have the private partnerships.
Oh, the people, yeah.
And I think one of the biggest one as
Do
well
we have a
is
P3
TRC.
policy?
We don't.
That's a good one to have.
You mean the PPP? The
Yeah.
3P?
Good to have a policy that shows
So we
how
started
reflect it.
developing the guidelines under previous leadership, and then of course with the change, it kind of like we didn't solidify it, but that's something that we're bringing back and see if we can hopefully present it to city manager's office and see how we can convert it into an adoptable policy.
so would
And I
you
think
need,
council
would you need
voted.
those action items to be part of as a motion?
As advisory members, you can take a motion and make that recommendation for our department to continue working, not to continue, but for our department to look into the development of guidelines or revamping of current guidelines on this program.
And that also helps you structure the agendas for the next year. Also, if you
yeah.
have projects that you have for yourselves. So I'd like to make a motion that we review, that the department review, and bring updates to some of these, these work documents that are needing to be updated and see, we can go on as we go into 2024 and see where we can go from there.
To update,
To update the 380 and other documents that need to be updated per the city's economic development office.
okay?
If I can request an amendment of that, discussion, if I can request an amendment of that to include an update of our economic development policy and a scorecard to be done as of, I guess, today on, of what we were successful in and what we weren't.
Who would we get to do that scorecard though? Would we be talking to the Development Foundation, the Chamber of Commerce? I mean, there's more other, would it be just us or like how would we determine?
I would say it would be a third party, maybe the
Right.
chamber, maybe a consultant, whoever is capable of doing it. But I do think it needs to be outside of the city because we're scoring essentially the city on what has been done.
question and discussion. Include an update on economic development department policy. Can you further elaborate on that?
That was.
No,
Oh.
You mentioned it as part of your
Right.
amendment to
the
the
plan.
motion.
Oh.
Oh, the plan?
The plan, yes.
Oh, okay, it's because you
Yeah, I
mentioned
recall, so that's why I
policy.
went.
And I thought, okay,
No, sorry, did I say policy? I
you meant the
plan.
study,
Yeah.
okay.
The economic development, plan from the Vivo Laredo Comprehensive Plan.
Renee, accept the amendment. Renee. Pedro, que te aceptas.
Yes, I accept the,
You have to accept it too, you seconded it. Yeah. You have to accept it too, you seconded it.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
accept it, yes.
Any further discussion, would anyone else like to add? Call for the question.
That'll keep us busy all year.
I'm sorry?
That'll keep us busy all year.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to action item B, discussion and possible action regarding 2024 EDAC meeting schedule. I think it's the last page on our agenda. So right now, to sum up the dates, it's basically the second Thursday of every month. I'm not sure if anyone has a preference on first, second, third week of every month, but that's how all that gets laid out. It's the last page on our packet. So go to December. Or section one? No, it'll be December and then the last page.
Oh, yeah, December.
I like hammering everything out in the first week of every month, but it's up to the committee.
Yeah, we're doing the second week, right?
Right now, it's-
Second Wednesday, what is it?
Second Thursday.
Second Thursday.
yeah.
do the first Wednesdays? Or you want to go Thursday?
I prefer the first
would
week of every
recommend that we
month.
stay away from the first week only because there are some other commissions that overlap with,
Yeah.
and other board members,
Okay.
yes.
There's also council, so
Yes.
first,
And then it's canceled, yeah.
first Monday.
That's a good point.
So we're doing second Wednesday,
Thursday.
Thursday. I'm
Can I
fine with
request-
the same,
We do the third?
The third.
the third.
Yeah, the
We can do
third
the third.
Thursday. So the middle of the month then?
I can't do it Thursday.
No?
That's a chamber.
I think we've been,
I'm okay with the second.
Yeah,
That's
me
fine.
too.
I can make it work.
Do months have a third Thursday for the most part?
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Fourth, it gets a little choppy. Third, yeah.
even the second Wednesday instead of Thursday.
No,
No.
second Wednesday I have
I'm okay with Thursday.
Okay.
Okay, I'll-
I think it's
Someone wants
easier
early
if we
weekends,
just
that's
keep
right.
the
Yeah, can we just keep it, yeah. 'cause we-
Okay, so do I hear a motion to approve the 2024 proposed EDAC meeting schedule? Motion, do I hear a
Second
second?
Thursday, no.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. I think that is, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
can I make an announcement?
Yes.
Right quick? Thank you. Sorry. Apologies. Caught me eating. I just wanted to thank everybody for, I think this has been extremely educational. I've learned a lot from this committee. I do want to officially say this is my last EDAC meeting with this group. I know I've spoken with Councilman Gutierrez, who already has a very good replacement, who I think is going to make significant contributions to this committee. My hope is, again, that we continue to make these significant changes and move Laredo forward. I think, like I said, I think I've learned a lot more than I've contributed with this particular committee, but I do want to thank each and every one of you for your guidance and everything that I've learned thus far about economic development for the city of Laredo. So I just wanted to mention that, and I want to thank everyone for their time and their patience with me. I think my New Year's resolution is to say no.
And you're starting early.
I'm just spread pretty thin. It's nothing that I did not like about this particular committee. Like I said, I've learned a lot more than I feel I've contributed. So I can be very good about having that awareness. And I do think that my strengths lie in other areas to help the city move forward. But I am very confident that my replacement is going to mesh very well with this group and, like I said, make some significant contributions. So I want to thank everyone again.
Thank you for
I
your service.
appreciate each and
Thank
every one of
you.
you, and
Thank you.
I'm still here open to help the city in any way. I'm doing a lot of community outreach as it is. And like I said, I think my goal for the new year is to say no and just not be spread so thin with other projects I have going on with the city. So I want to thank you guys again. Happy holidays and appreciate it.
Thanks.
And if I may add, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Rocha, thank you so much for your contributions. I know that, and I'm pretty sure that we're gonna cross paths again, you know, given your commitment and all the different hats that you wear as a volunteer in many other, you know, different organizations. And thank you so much for being part of this committee. We truly value the contributions that you
Yeah.
made and the commitment that you had during the year.
I appreciate it. You know, as we've gone through the years, as I've been here through the last few years, I've heard everybody's voice from those advocating for fellow Laredoans and then those really advocating for the city, which should be one and the same. A lot of times it's not. But I will continue to reach out to each and every one of you when I do have some concerns about our fellow Laredoans and their concerns about certain complications when it comes to building here in Laredo, specifically with our local businesses, which really do need a lot of help. And I really do hope that this committee can make some significant strides in this new year, 2024, to help those businesses, because as we hear it, it's one thing to hear it, it's another thing to go through it and to experience it. And I've experienced it firsthand as of late, which that'll be a different conversation for a different time. But I understand it now. I see it's not only hearing those frustrations, but when you go through it yourself, you have a much more, there's empathy there, and you can relate to your fellow Laredoans a little bit more when you hear what they're going through and then you experience it yourself. And it's real, the struggles that we have here are real, and I hope that we can find ways to come together from city standpoint and citizens to help these local businesses. Because at the end of the day, that's where most of our economy is coming from, these local businesses. So I appreciate y'all's help and continue to advocate for our citizens. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Get to report. Get the report.
So, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion
Get to report.
Second, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.